The following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
Welcome into an all-new edition of the Belly Up Fantasy Live baseball show from Belly Up Sports. And as you can tell, we are clean shaven here on this show.
That's right.
I'm Vince Stover, the host, joined as I am every week by the senior writer at bellyupsports.com, Kevin Wilson. Hey, Kev, how you doing?
I'm doing great. And as we were talking before we came on, it's been a little wintry around these parts the last couple of days. But the sun was out today. And while I was sitting down, we went to a restaurant. We were getting ready to – I had some catfish. But anyways, I looked over there and I saw live baseball.
There you go.
Going on. It was Pittsburgh and Baltimore. So I was quite pleased with that. So baseball is being played, and so life is good.
Yeah, I mean, life is very good. It's springtime, at least in our hearts, at the very least, as we delve into baseball. And there's baseball news, and there's baseball games, and there's, of course, fantasy baseball as well. Let's not waste any time. Let's get into our first segment. We call it the Fantasy Burner. Our Fantasy Burner is presented by bellyupsports.com. It's where you can find articles involving every single sport. So a lot of baseball stuff getting ready to come out and already coming out. Some football stuff, especially off-season things, basketball, hockey, racing. There's all kinds of stuff going on at bellyupsports.com. And it's where you catch all of Kevin Wilson's articles as well. There on bellyupsports.com. Our fantasy burner today, we are talking about draft strategies because as this week we'll turn the page to March, and that's when drafts really start picking up. Ours are still a couple weeks away, a few weeks away. I've got 3 drafts set 2 days apart from each other. So I got one on I think a Friday maybe, and one on a Sunday and one on a Tuesday. And I still have another league that they're slacking and don't have the date set yet on it, but that's okay. Anyway, so as we get into the draft time, we want to talk about draft strategies. We've been talking about these rankings and getting those to you as well. And in those rankings, sometimes we talk about certain things about, well, you know, you want to wait on this or take an early swing at this or whatever it may be. And so that's kind of what I want to get into here today in this Fantasy Burner segment, and that is general draft strategies as you prepare for your draft. And so being that Kevin is a defending fantasy baseball champion from one of his leagues, and I'm a defending fantasy baseball champion from one of my leagues, I figured let's give some advice out here today, Kev. So
Okay.
I got a couple things on my list, but I'll let you start it off. What do you have to advise people on with drafting?
Well, you need to start your draft strategies long before draft day.
Yep.
And so what kind of league are you in? How many people are in it? What are the positions? Is it just a straight up positions? Do you have, infield, like we do, first base, third base, second base, short, and how many pitcher spot? You need to have all that mapped out. And so once you do that, then my first draft strategy that I can't recommend highly enough is to do mock drafts until your eyes bleed. So, especially once you figure out where your draft position is.
Yeah.
And but even before that, because in ESPN, they've got a new thing out where you can download exact your league settings and you can set where you want to draft. And then you just go at it. And so I highly recommend that. And that's just going a bit against the computer. I also recommend going up against actual human beings, because then you get to see how people that are real react to these kind of things. Because we know all these experts say, do this, do this, do this. But are people that are actually in your league, are they following any of that? Or are they doing their own thing? So that's the kind of things that you need to determine before draft day.
Yeah, knowing your league is so important when you're talking about, again, when you're going into your draft strategy. You got to know what are your limits. If you got pitcher limits, you've got to know obviously your roster makeup, all that kind of stuff like Kevin talked about. Super important to know your league and practice what your league is as well. I 100% agree. I'll kind of add on top of that, not only know your league, but know your league members. And that varies obviously in the leagues that you're in. If you're in with all friends and you know them all really well, it's super helpful because you know their favorite teams, you know their favorite players. And knowing that can help you come draft time, because you can be looking, especially if you're in the end of the first round, let's say, and if it's a 10-man league. So once you get to about 7, 8, you start looking at that turn. Okay, you're going to be up again pretty fast in the second round and in the future rounds as well. And sometimes you got to look at, okay, do I take this player now, or will he be here in 3 or 4 picks when I pick again? And you know who's picking in between you to know, okay, well, there's a really good chance they're going to go after this player. So I better take them now, kind of a thing. And I've always been a firm believer and knowing who everyone in your league cheers for. It doesn't mean they're always going to draft in a homer style. Kevin is not a homer when it comes to drafting players for fantasy drafts, but it's very good to know who cheers for who. And if you've got a unique situation, like last year we had a Rockies fan in our league, it was great because I wasn't drafting any Rockies, but they did. And so it kind of helped me in my strategy, knowing, hey, here's where a Rockies player is sitting. I'm probably safe to go this direction because they're probably going to take the Rockies player. And sure enough, they did. And so it's especially good when you have people like A's fans in the league,
Which we do have one.
in the league, White Sox fans in the league. Those kinds of things are great. Doesn't happen for everybody, but know your league members as well. If you're in a league that you don't know everybody, get on the chat and just ask, hey, who's everybody cheering for this year? And it just gives you some insight maybe on where they might think. If it comes down to 2 players and one of them's on their favorite team, the chances are they're going to take the one that's on their favorite team. So a good thing to know. And again, if you're a good fantasy player, you're not going to pick homer picks. I'm always going to have at least one Brewer on my roster. But I think I've proven over the years, just because they're a Brewer doesn't mean I'm drafting them. And so, that's the way it works sometimes. But a lot of times people are going to want 2, 3, or 4 players from their favorite team on their fantasy team as well. So good to know that too. All right, Kev, what else you got?
Okay, so you can know for sure that I will have none of any 3 or 4 guys from a single team. So
Yeah.
just know that. And so when it comes to the first early parts of your draft, especially in the first round, to me, you need to target players that you think have the highest floor. And by that, I mean they're not they don't have injury paths or any of that. And because the first round can put you behind everybody else. And I know of what I speak because last year I took Strider in the very first round, and we all know how that worked out. So if you lose your first round pick, you're behind everybody else. So I want a player that I reasonably can expect is going to be there throughout the season. Don't get cute or any of that stuff. Take a player that you think has the highest probability of playing the season. So since I got burned on that, pitchers are not in my first round, maybe even second, possibly even third round of drafting. And so I've come 180 degrees on that. And I've done some mock drafts, and there are pitchers, if you want to wait a little bit later, that can help you. And they're still solid pitchers. And all that depends on the size of the league too. But if you're in a smaller league like we are, go ahead and take the players that you think will be there to help you throughout the season.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I wanted to talk about next, was your balance between pitchers and hitters. And I think my personal strategy is, if I take a pitcher in the first round, I'm probably sitting at the last pick in the first round. And that's the only time I'll take a pitcher in the first round, is if I'm there at the second to last or last pick in the first round. And I could wait till the second round, take them on the swing, but it just depends. I am not big on taking pitchers early for that reason that Kevin mentioned. If a pitcher gets hurt, if your top two pitchers, if either of them get injured, you're not going to be able to replace them on the waiver wire. And if they go out and it's a back, an elbow, a shoulder, it's going to be a problem all year long. And so, in my opinion, it's so much easier to replace an Aaron Judge versus a Strider. And you're never going to replace Aaron Judge. You're not going to replace his points, but you're going to get a lot closer to replacing his points than you are a top tier pitcher that goes down as well. So I personally think you should wait on pitchers as well. End of the first round, if the top guy's still there, that's one thing. But second, third, fourth round is where I start looking a little bit more at pitchers. And a lot of it depends on how the draft is going. If everyone's taking hitters and I got the top two pitchers sitting there at the turn, I mean, I might take the top two pitchers just because that's the best value currently sitting at that spot. But typically I go in planning on holding on pitchers for a minute. That being said, you want to make sure you have a balanced roster when it comes to your top tier talent. So in your top 8 rounds, you probably want to be 3 and 4 as far as pitchers and hitters, or 2 and 5, 2 and 6, I guess, as well, somewhere in that range. You want to make sure you're balancing things out, because for the sake of this show, in one of the leagues I'm in, 2 years ago, no, last year, was it last year? Maybe even last year, I waited to round 14 to draft my first pitcher. And I thought this will be fun experiment. Let's take a look at it, see how it works, and we'll talk about it on the show. Well, it did not work. It was not good. I lost that league. And so, and I lost it miserably. So you want to make sure you have some balance. And I think that's important too. Kevin, you got another wise piece of advice.
Balance is all well and good earlier on in the draft. You're not necessarily concerned about what positions,
right?
Primarily, you want the best player. And of course, that doesn't mean you take 3 third basemen, of course, or any of that stuff. But you want the best players. The middle of your draft is where you start filling in some of the holes on your roster. And then towards the end, to me, is players that you don't worry about floors at that point. You're looking for guys that you think might go beyond what you believe they might accomplish. And start filling up at the end of your draft some of those guys. Mike Trout is one of the ones we talked about. And if he's sitting there in round 20, go ahead and pull the lever, because you just never know. But so that's why I think you take the first players at the highest floor you think, and then after that you start filling out your roster, and then after that go ahead and swing for some fences, because those guys are probably going to wind up on the waiver wire floor anyway during the season. So go ahead, and that's the way I approach the draft, and I think that works out well.
And if you've watched our show, you know this, but if you're new to the show, we are talking about redraft and points leagues.
That's right.
So this means drafting from scratch. If this is a dynasty league, the strategy is going to be different. If this is a keeper league, the strategy is going to be a little different as well. If this is a roto league, pretty much still the same. Categories league, still the same for the most part. But just to make sure we explain that, it's a points league that we're drafting in, and it is a redraft. So you're starting from scratch with it. I would say, and you mentioned this, Kevin, as well, especially early on, you're not paying a ton of attention to positions. If you're going through the draft and going, okay, well, I have a first baseman, so I don't want to draft him. I'll draft a second baseman, and just trying to fill up your roster spots by order, you're gonna miss out on some guys. A couple things to remember with this: there's always trades. So after the draft is done, if you've got 3 third basemen, well, that means someone else is probably slacking on third baseman, and they might look at it and go, "Oh no, I didn't get a third baseman," and they need to trade for it. Or if you have someone who's a loser and they do auto drafting, they're going to need.
Please don't do that. Please don't.
Yeah, don't be that person. Yeah. So it's okay. I wouldn't suggest drafting 3 third basemen to start your draft, but if you got a player that's going to be really good in fantasy baseball and he's there, you draft him and you figure it out. In most leagues and ESPN leagues, especially, you do have your position players. Then you have a corner infield spot and a middle infield spot. Then you have a utility spot or a DH spot, whatever. You've got positional availability a lot of times where you can play those guys. Where you get into trouble is if you stock up on those things and someone gets hurt in another position and you're trying to figure out how to make roster room to replace the injured person, and you got too many at one spot. So you do want to pay attention to it, but you don't want to skip a third baseman because you already have a third baseman, and you only have one. It's okay to have two. It's not a problem for sure. And so take the good guys, go after it, go find it, go get it as well. I got one more thing, Kevin. You got anything else?
That's pretty much wraps it up.
Okay. So the last thing that I've got is just be prepared. Have a list of players that you want in each position. This is how I do it. At least I have each position laid out with guys that I want on my team, and 5, 6, 7 guys in each position, varying from guys early in the draft to guys later in the draft. And so when I get around to trying to pick somebody and you get later in the draft, middle of the draft, later in the draft, and you're trying to find people, because at least I come across a spot where all the players that are ESPN's ranked next to go are guys that I don't want on my team. and so I'm like, well, I don't want any of these guys. So I look at my list and say, who do I want? I go find it, see who's towards the top of the ESPN ranking, because I know that's more likely to get picked first. And kind of go that way. So I would highly suggest having a list of guys that you want early. And if you don't get them, guys that you're okay with later on. That'll also help you understand, hey, I can wait on this position. If you've got a really long list of guys you like at second base and a really short list of guys you like at shortstop, well, then you're going to take a shortstop earlier and you'd be okay to wait later on second base or whatever it may be. So it's important that you put the time in. Prepare. If you like things on computers, put them on computers. If you like them on paper, put them on paper. But have a plan in place. And I guess last thing actually is understand that your plan could explode in the middle of the draft, and all of a sudden you have no plan. So it's okay. It happens to everyone.
That's right.
Take a deep breath and carry on. It'll all work out just fine.
Yeah, just one thing I just thought of is because I've seen people say in the chats that they're, especially when it comes to the catcher position, that, well, I'm not going to draft a catcher at all and just leave that open on my roster. Just so that you know, that will not happen in our league. So if you don't draft a catcher at all and it's the last round, that's all the options you are going to have.
Yeah.
You will have a catcher on your roster. So know that about your league. And we talked about that, what kind of roster construction do you have to have? You must fill in our league all of the positions on it. So, and then later, if you don't do that, that's all you're going to get. So just know that going in. It's like the tight ends of fantasy football. Well, I won't draft a tight end. Well, yes, you will, because that's all the options you're going to have.
And
same thing here. Go ahead.
The people who say that, the people who don't want to have somebody in their lineup, is, in my opinion, stupid. You want as many people in your lineup as possible, playing games, earning you points.
Don't leave a spot open if you don't have to.
Don't try to outthink the system. It's works for, go check out the champions. They know how to do it. So that's what I'll leave it with.
Okay, I just thought I'd throw that in there because I see that time and time again. Well, I just won't draft a catcher. Well, in most leagues, that's not going to work out.
Yeah.
All the leagues I've ever been in, you have to have a player in each position on your roster.
Yeah, ESPN will not let you. I mean, I'm sure you can change it, but ESPN typically will not let you. Once you fill up your allotted things, it only shows you the players available of those other positions you don't have yet. So, that gets fun as well, especially when you're looking for somebody and like, where is he? Oh, I've already filled that. I can't draft that position again. So yeah,
that's right.
For sure. All right. That's our fantasy burner this week for draft strategies. And it's time to transition now to our second of our segments, and we call it the Hot Corner. The Hot Corner is presented by Righteous Felon Jerky. Join the flavor revolution at righteousfelon.com and use the code BELLYUP. You're going to get 15% off your purchase. And no better time to get some jerky than right now, because I'm talking about every Sunday, every Saturday and Sunday, you've got racing on, you've got baseball kicking up, you've got basketball, you've got hockey, you've got all kinds of fun stuff coming up. So you need to get you some jerky to get you ready for spring. Let's start before we get into our NL Central preview. A few things going on in the baseball world. Juan Soto's first at bat, a home run. How about that? Juan Soto can still hit, even going to the Mets, excuse me. And I don't know. It's fun just to have baseball again. Do you take anything away from the first at bat being a home run for Soto?
Right. And you got home runs and you got hitters getting hit in the head.
Yeah.
The very first day of spring training. So baseball, gotta love it.
The Yankees announced that they are getting rid of their facial hair rule, where now they can be clean shaven, or not clean shaven, well groomed, well groomed beards now on the team. My immediate thought was poor Devin Williams shaved just a few days ago, and now found out he didn't have to.
That.
So I feel bad for him. Listen, the rule. I grew up in churches and Bible college. This rule is not new to me. This is something I have known of. That being said, I always thought it was kind of a weird rule for baseball to have, any baseball team to have. And it was just kind of nostalgic at the same time. Everybody knew what they were getting into when they signed there. It's not a surprise or anything like that. And I don't know. I kind of thought it was fun. I thought it was the one thing that maybe would have someone pick another team over the Yankees. Gave a little bit of a ding to the Yankees, maybe. I don't know. That being said, it is gone. I'm interested to see how it gets enforced and all that kind of stuff as well. And it actually might cause more problems now because the Yankees say it has to be well groomed, and now they go to someone and say, "Hey, your beard's not well groomed," and that person disagrees. It could actually get more interesting now. But any thoughts on the Yankees changing their facial hair policy?
I never thought I'd see the day when they would change that, because that was George Steinbrenner way, way back in the day, and it had survived all this time. And when I read the two words, well groomed.
Yeah.
Well, who's the well groomed police? I guess it's the same person that made sure everybody was shaved, I suppose. But
yeah.
But you want to express your individuality, I guess go ahead. And having a beard on is not something for me. And because I tried that once and it was ridiculous. So I'm not going to be doing that. And but if you want to do that, now you go ahead and do it. So
that's right.
Do it.
It is what it is. All right. We've been previewing each Major League Baseball team. We've been going division by division, and today we come across the National League Central. And I want to give a quick shout out to Brad Taylor. He hosts The Bottom Line here in Lexington, Kentucky on ESPN Radio. And I sat down with him for a couple hours today, just catching up as I'll be moving to, this weekend. And so just catching up with him, he kind of helped get me into the podcast world a bit. And so we talked baseball. We talked baseball overs, win totals. We talked second baseman. We had some good conversation about that too. And we talked about trying to pronounce baseball players' names. So that was fun. We had a good conversation today. So shout out to Brad. He's doing great stuff here in Lexington. We're going to open up here with the Cincinnati Reds in the National League Central. Last year, the Reds, an underwhelming 77 games. No surprise to this host, because I tried to warn everybody, but nobody would listen to me.
Well, I listen a little bit, just so you know.
Okay. This year, their rotation looks like Hunter Green. Brady Singer comes over from Kansas City. Andrew Abbott, Nick Martinez, and Nick Lodolo. They also got Wade Miley picked up. He's currently injured. It'd be a later addition. And then currently listed as in the pen, but another guy that could come up was Graham Ashcraft. Has started some games, of course, as well. When I look at this rotation, all I can see is potential, but maybe untapped potential. Hunter Green has shown what he can do. I really like Nick Lodolo. We've talked about him before. Abbott and Martinez are guys that, Martinez is 35 years old, 34 years old, but he's been there, done that kind of a thing. And then Brady Singer, 28 years old, coming off a decent season and a good team there in Kansas City as well. I really feel like this is a rotation that has potential to have a really good year.
I agree with that. The potential is the word that came to my mind first and foremost on this one. And but I think there's potentially a very good rotation here, and that's something that they haven't seen in Cincinnati. And when you look at this, Hunter Green's 25, and Lodolo 27, Brady Singer's 28, Martinez is the old man at 34, Graham Ashcraft is 27. So there are some young players still here, and I liked what the potential that they have, as long as they can avoid that home ballpark, because that's one of the best hitting parks in the country. So that always gives me a little pause. But if they can overcome that, I think I like this rotation the way it sets up.
Yeah, I think that one of the other issues is just availability, right? The best ability is availability. Last year, Brady Singer had 32 games that he started,
Yep.
but none of the current Reds got more than 26. Hunter Green had 26 and Ashcraft 25. You're just going to have to give more from the top end of your rotation. And 150 innings for Green last year. It needs to be better. That being said, the strikeout ratio, Lodolo and Green are the guys you're looking at for strikeouts, and ERA. Lodolo did not look good last year in his 21 games, but everyone else did. Hunter Green actually solid, 2.75. So that's what you want to see out of him. You need everybody in those low threes at least to fulfill the season as seen. In the bullpen, Alexis Diaz is your saves getter. They bring over Taylor Rogers from San Francisco, a really good addition to the pen. They got some guys in middle relief as well that are decent. Emilio Pagan, I believe is how you say it, comes over from Minnesota. He's 33, so you got to, from there, you got to figure it out, I guess. But really, Rogers coming over is the big addition. 2.4 ERA last year and 60 innings pitched out of the pen, and decent strikeout ratio as well. Alexis Diaz, 28 saves last year, but he was just under 4 on his ERA, and they're going to need just more efficiency from him if they're going to come out and win some games this year.
Yeah, you nailed it all right there. You got all my talking points, because I was going to talk about Diaz. His ERA needs to be lower, and so you didn't mention Brett Suter. He's
Right.
He's 35, but he had a 3.15 ERA. That's solid, and he can complete games, and he can pitch earlier if you need him to. They've got a couple of lefties now out there. As Rogers, that you mentioned, he's a left-handed pitcher, and so I like once again the potential of this bullpen can exceed what they've done in the past. So I think that they will. So this pitching staff, I think, is going to be just fine.
All right. Let's go to the offensive side of things now. Only one player will start the season over 30 years old in this lineup. We'll start it off in center field, TJ Friedl, shortstop, Ellie De La Cruz, second base, Matt McLean, catcher, Tyler Stevenson. I could have swore he was older. He's 28. I would have thought
I
he was
would have
older.
definitely have bet dollars that he was older than that.
Right fielder, Jake Fraley, first base, Spencer Steer, third base, Yeimer Candelario. He's 31. DH, Gavin Lux, left fielder, Austin Hayes, who's 29, as well, coming over from Baltimore, or Philadelphia, technically. And then on the bench, they got Jose Trevino, comes over from the Yankees, the catcher, and Christian Encarnacion Strand, 25 years old, first baseman as well. We'll see him at DH some. I would think you would see him at DH over Gavin Lux, but Lux is a lefty, Strand a righty. So, again, you look at this team, at one point they were really, really young. Now they should be right where they need to be. A lot of 25, 26, 27, 29. It's an ideal age group right now, and really, health is the big thing. This should be a pretty good team.
It should be. And you mentioned about Strand. His problem is he's a 190 hitter.
Yeah.
So that's in Cincinnati. That's not going to cut it at all.
No.
So, and he's 25, but some of these other guys, they're all like 25, whatever, in that area. And so the only thing, Ellie De La Cruz, we've talked about him, and he is what he is. He's going to give you all the things that make you happy that you're at a baseball game, but then he'll strike out 3 times when you go the next game. So that's something just to keep an eye on right there. I would like to see him clear that up just a little, but he's coming into his 3rd year now, so that is what it is. Gavin Lux, former Dodger, as you mentioned, and I figure he could do some damage out there in Cincinnati. But once again, there's potential here hitting in Cincinnati that inflates everything, and so I don't want to sound like I'm going woohoo over Cincinnati, because I'm not. But this is a team that potential definitely describes everything about this team. If they meet that potential, they'll be right there. If they shrink back a little bit, 80 wins might be what's happening going their way.
Yeah, we're going to look at the whole division. They should be contenders for the division. Doesn't mean they'll win, but they should be in the conversation come, August, in my opinion, at the very least. They got the talent. Now, health is everything. And Ellie De La Cruz needs to be a superstar. He needs to be a superstar. McLean needs to be healthy. He came off this great year. Everybody was excited about him last year, and then he gets injured, ends up not playing at all. Spencer Steer needs to take another step forward this year. They're not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but they are talented. They won 77 games last year. The win total is 78.5 for this year. And Kevin, I just think they're at worst, they should be an 82 win team. And at best, I see them in the 86 to 88 range as well.
I agree with that. Thinking that they're just going to win one more game than they did a year ago. Yeah. I think that this maturation process will accelerate that. I agree with you 100%. I'm going over on this as well. So it's an easy over for me.
I agree. All right, let's go to Chicago. Last year, they were cursed. This year, the curse just may be lifted. 83 wins last year for this team. Their rotation starting the season looks like this. Shota Imanaga gets the opening day. Justin Steele, Jamison Taillon, Matthew Boyd, and Javier Assad. I will say this. I like Imanaga. I really like Justin Steele, and I'm a pretty big fan of Matthew Boyd as well. He's 34 years old, but he came over from Cleveland after last season. I don't like Taillon, and Assad, I can take it or leave it. That being said, it's an intriguing rotation for the Cubs coming into this season.
I'm a little higher, I have to say, on Taillon than you are. 3.27 ERA, pitch 165 innings. Gotta like that. And Assad, he pitched 147 innings. So, these are guys that you have back your rotation, and they're pitching this many innings. That looks good to me. You couldn't ask anything more out of Shota over there. 15-3. He brought on the power right there. Justin Steele had that unfortunate injury when he was going to first base last year, but I think he'll get over. He's over that, and he had a 3.07 ERA. So this rotation sets up to be one of the better ones in this division. So I like how this is going to look going into spring training. As long as everybody stays healthy, they've got the pitchers to make this work.
So Taillon, he also 1.8 walks per 9, 6.8 strikeouts per 9. He's not going to strike anybody out, and he's to me, he just puts you in danger of anybody in that rotation. I think he's the one that can hurt you the most, as far as hurt the Cubs the most. Whereas the other guys at least have the danger. Matthew Boyd, a 10.44 strikes per nine. Imanaga and Steele are over 9 strikeouts per 9. So Tyon to me is just the less dangerous of the group. And that doesn't mean he's not going to win games. It doesn't mean that he's, bad. I don't know. And I guess I look at it somewhat from a fantasy perspective too. I go, he just doesn't really interest me or scare me in any way when he's on the mound.
No, he's one of those guys who in real life means more than fantasy.
Yeah.
And so, in the grand scheme of things, and that's what you want if you're a real, owner or a real manager or a real fan of a baseball team. So,
yeah, good point.
I'll take that. If he doesn't have a high strikeout rate, maybe that means he limits his pitches. So, so I think that's check that off to me as a positive in the real world. In fantasy, there's no reason why you'd want him on your fantasy team to me, because he doesn't have the potential of the points that some of these other guys have. But in real life, I'll take him.
They add to the bullpen. Colin Ray comes over from Milwaukee. Craig Counsell knows him well. He pitched 167 innings last year. That's a guy that he's 34. But if you have a guy go down, he can step right in. You won't lose much on your rotation as well. They also bring in a new closer this year. Ryan Presley comes over from Houston after basically losing his job to Josh Hader. Ryan Presley's 36 years old. And so he's good, but that kind of worries me a little bit too. And when I look at this bullpen, Porter Hodge, Ryan Brazier, Tyson Miller, Caleb Thielbar, Keegan Thompson. There's not a lot in this bullpen that I go, oh, that's scary. So they're going to need a lot out of their starting pitchers, or they're going to need to make some additions to their bullpen, because right now the Cubs, this is where they're going to get hurt, is in the bullpen.
I agree with that 100%. And I've seen Ryan Presley come off the board in fantasy drafts way earlier than he should.
Yeah.
And because ever since last 2-3 years now, he's been on the downward slide of this, and now all of a sudden they're going to try and make him the closer. Yeah. I'm not sure I'm buying into that. And so he's the key to all this. That when you look at this, 3.49 is fine if you're a starter.
Yeah,
it's not fine if that's your closer's ERA. So this bullpen, it scares me a lot, same as you. And so you can get all the starting quality pitching you want, but then the relief comes in and gives up 3 runs. That's not going to help you.
Ask Cincinnati fans, they'll tell you.
That's right.
All right, let's go to the offensive side of things. The lineup is currently looking like this: left field, Ian Happ; right field, the newly acquired Kyle Tucker; DH, Saya Suzuki; first base, Michael Bush; shortstop, Dansby Swanson; second base, Nico Horner; center field, Pete Crow Armstrong; third base, I love him, Matt Shaw. He's going to be on a lot of my fantasy teams this year; and catcher, Miguel Amaya. Off the bench, they got some depth here. I like it. Carson Kelly comes over from end of the year with Texas last year. Justin Turner, they recently got signed.
We just talked about him last week.
We did just talk about him. Old guy, 40 years old. And then John Birdie is here as well, 35 years old. So they got an old bench, but guys that have been there, guys that should be able to help, these young guys like Matt Shaw. I think Justin Turner being there for Matt Shaw is a pretty big deal, actually. I think it's a really smart signing for the Cubs. Overall, I think this looks like a pretty solid lineup.
I agree with that, and all that depends. I know you, Mr. Kyle out there, that you're not big on him.
Yeah,
but he needs to be the guy he's been a couple of years ago in Houston. If that's what he is, and I think this ballpark will agree with him. So I'm bigger on him. I think I always have been than you have been on him.
Yeah.
But Nico Horner, is he going to be healthy? I saw that they were saying that he's going to be ready for opening day, but that's a question at this point. And so, but he's an excellent hitter. Dansby Swanson, he's on the way down. Only hit 242 last year. That's about, to me, what you expect out of him now. at his age. And so all these guys, they need to hit because, especially in the later innings, because their bullpen gave up the lead. And so the offense, they could be okay. And they need to be okay in that ballpark. So
Yeah.
we'll see.
For the record, 6 of these starting 9 had double-digit steals last year. So they're a base running team, and that's something you can expect out of the Cubs, out of Craig Counsell teams. They're going to run the bases for sure. Cubs, let's see here. Last year, 83 wins. This year, the win total is set at 85.5. And that's a hard one for me, Kevin, because I'm sitting here going, okay, bullpen stinks. They could always add somebody. Offense looks good. Rotation looks good. And I feel like 85 is the number. So at 85.5, I go under, but that one would scare me too. If I was a betting man, I would stay away from this one.
I would as well. This is about one of the harder ones to peg. And I'm thinking 86. And so not much more than you, but since it's 85.5, I'll go over.
Slightly over.
Because there's nobody that's going to win 96 games in this division. So
right.
That's I think 86 is about where I'd peg this.
All right, very good. Let's head to Milwaukee. Milwaukee Brewers up next. They won the division last year, 93 wins last season. And I'm going to cringe as I read these names. The rotation for this year: Freddie Peralta, the opening day starter at 28. Tobias Myers coming off a phenomenal season at 26 years old. Nestor Cortez comes over from the Yankees. He's 30. Aaron Savali, really solid season last year as well, 29. Aaron Ashby at 26 is currently starting pitcher number 5. They do have some other options. Brandon Woodruff is back around, so we'll see exactly when he gets back in. Robert Gasser is a possibility. DL Hall as well. All those guys injured, so we're not sure what their opening day status is. But I'll tell you, Kevin, when I look at a rotation, the first thing I look at is the starter, the ace. And I love Freddie Peralta. He seems like a great guy, great personality, but I really don't want him to be starting pitcher number 1. That scares me. I like the overall depth of the team, of the rotation, but I don't feel like there's a true ace there for the Brewers.
Right. And that's the exact same scenario as we talked last year.
Yeah.
And Freddie Peralta did nothing to allay those fears. Right. And so 3.68. Okay. It's, Milwaukee's got a hitting park. So, but you'd still like your ace to be below that.
Yeah.
And 173.2 innings, the 200, I think that's 200 Ks. He had exactly 200 Ks on the season. So you like that, but you'd like to see him be a little more, aces, okay, than that. And can Brandon Woodruff provide anything? Because if he can, you look at this, he has a career 3.18 ERA. He's a solid starter. So if he can provide anything, that's a boost. And so we'll see. And that's not a good place when you're you're trying to defend your division championship.
Yeah.
We'll see. It's not what you want in your starting rotation.
Yeah, Tobias Myers is the highlight really of this pitching rotation. Last year he goes 138 innings with a 3.0 ERA, 25 games started. Just a solid season. They also got some guys that I expect will debut this coming season as well, and could debut as starters. They might debut as bullpen guys. We'll see. They got a decent system, so we'll kind of see how that stuff goes down. And again, DL Hall came over in the Baltimore trade with Burns. There were moments where you said, okay, I can see it. And there were other moments where you're like, this isn't good. So, and then Nestor Cortez,
Big question.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I'm not a fan. I mean, I like him because he's a Brewer now, but before that, I didn't like him. And, we'll see. He's a lefty. That's important as well. And again, these guys are younger than I would have thought. Aaron Savali, 29. I thought he was older than that. Cortez only 30. So, I mean, they're not old. Hopefully it works out.
Peralta is 28, so
yeah.
It's not like he's over the hill.
Yeah. Now the bullpen, on the other hand, I do like. And even though they lose Devin Williams to the trade, who was a stud closer in Milwaukee, Trevor McGill steps right in. Last year looked really solid. 21 saves on the season last year. 2.72. I'd like to see that go down, but 2.72 ERA there. So I like him as the closer. Jared Koenig, Joel Payamps, Brian Hudson, Nick Mears, Elvis Peguero, Tyler Alexander, Connor Thomas, all will see time in the pen. Abner Uribe, he is a young pitcher who spent some time up in the bullpen last year, and he throws straight fire. He's got to get his control a little bit better, but you'll see him there as well. Again, if you don't follow the Brewers, you probably don't know these names a whole lot, but I do follow the Brewers, and I'll tell you, I'm not worried about the bullpen.
No, I'm not either, especially you mentioned him, Joel Payamps.
Mm-hmm.
Is that it? Okay. And 3.05 ERA. So that's solid. And you got to like that. And then you tie in. The only reason why they made this trade of their closer is because of McGill. And so if they don't have him, they probably wouldn't do that, but they do. So I think this, unlike the Cubs earlier, this bullpen is the exact opposite of that. So they can come in and slam some doors. And so I like this, that they've got some guys that, like you mentioned, never heard of, but they've got people that you need to hear of.
Yeah.
And so the starters just need to get through 5 or 6, then they're okay after that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I will clarify, the main reason why they traded Devin Williams is because they're cheap. But having McGill there does help give a little confidence for sure.
Yes, that's the reason why they made the trade they did last year as well. So
yep. All right, let's check out the offense for Milwaukee. A really, really young group this year, with the exception of a couple of guys. Jackson Chourio, the young up and coming star out in the outfield. Christian Yelich will probably see a lot of DH this year, not play as much in the field.
That.
And they can do that because of these young guys they've got. William Contreras, the catcher, he's a stud. Garrett Mitchell in center field. Rhys Hoskins at first base. He'll be the primary first baseman. Last year he split time. This year it'll be his job. Sal Frelick is back as well. He had some great defensive plays last year. Bryce Terang at second base. Even with Alex Bregman moving to second base, Bryce Terang is the best defensive second baseman in the league. He's a phenomenal glove. Joey Ortiz, who played third last year, will transition to shortstop with the Willy Adames trade. And then third base is the question mark. Caleb Durbin gets the first start in spring training. He traded in from New York. Oliver Dunn and Tyler Black are two other options that have been in the system for a little while. Tyler Black was actually a first-round draft pick for the Brewers, and I really expect him to get the job, honestly, over Durbin, but we'll see what Durbin does. On the bench, Eric Haas last year came in as a third catcher because they brought in another veteran catcher, and Haas just won a roster spot. They couldn't keep him off the roster. They carried 3 catchers for most of last season, DHing them and things like that, of course, as well. But he's back there. And then there's how about this name for a Milwaukee Brewer? Brewer Hicklin is an outfielder. He got his debut last year. And he's currently looking like he could possibly make the roster here as well. From there, listen, I'm a Brewers fan, so I'm a little homerish on this, but I really like this offense. So we need Rhys Hoskins to play like Rhys Hoskins, and we need Christian Yelich to be healthy for 150 games, 145 games, something like that, as well. And we need Joey Ortiz's bat to show up this year as well.
I agree with that. If because Rhys Hoskins hit 214 a year ago.
Yeah.
If you can make that 241, that's a solid thing. And I still hit 26 homers. Okay.
I take it.
So you will take that. And I am really excited about Bryce Terang and 50 stolen bases. Yep. And he hit 254. Yep. So if and he's 25 years old.
Yeah.
So if he adds, let's say, 20 points to that batting average, how many stolen bases can he get then? So I like that. William Contreras, we've talked about him. He is the best starting catcher in baseball at this point. And so whenever you have someone who's the best at his position, you got to feel good about that. And so there's some mix of veterans, there's some young guys here. So, and in that ballpark, I think this offense will be fine. So the pitching's where all this hinges to me.
Yeah, Jackson Churio, 21 years old.
Yes, 21.
He had 21 home runs and 22 stolen bases last year in 573 plate appearances, 275 average. I expect some of those numbers to rise, hopefully. And especially his on-base percentage needs to go up a little bit as well. Then the other guy that no one will care about, but I do, is Sal Frelick. Sal Frelick last year, he had 18 stolen bases, 259 batting average. Again, a great glove out in the outfield. He only had 2 home runs. He shows up to camp this year 25 pounds heavier, and it is all muscle. He looks absolutely jacked coming into camp this year. So if he passes this drug test, look for Sal Frelick to be have a little bit more power on him.
12 homers?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I double digits. Give me 10 dingers this year for Sal Frelick. From there. Last year, the Brewers were 93 wins. The Vegas has them at 82.5, and I don't see them dropping 11 games. I see them mid 80s. I think is their floor, and I think that they could hit 90 again and win the division again, possibly as well.
I'm not going to buy in the 90 just yet, but upper 80s, I could do that. So this is another one that I'm going to, because I had 83.5, but I'm going over. Doesn't matter, 82, 83, whatever it is. I'm going over on this one as well. And both central divisions of baseball, Vegas is underselling these teams. And so I'm really looking forward to these divisions putting egg on Vegas's face.
All right. Speaking of egg on the face, let's go to Pittsburgh. The Pirates won 76 games last year, and their rotation is tasty. Paul Skeens, Mitch Keller, Jared Jones, Andrew Haney, Bailey Falter. They got Johan Oviedo as a possibility as well. Oviedo as a possibility as well. And I mean, Skeens, Keller, Jones, and even I don't mind Haney that much either. I like those 4 guys especially.
Those the top 3, they measure up with anybody else's starting rotation. So if Pittsburgh could figure out the rest of their team as well as they have with these 3 guys, they'd be solid. And so out of the teams in this division, I put them in first as far as their starting rotation.
Okay. The scary thing here is innings. Skeens 1.96 ERA, phenomenal. 11.5 strikeouts per 9, phenomenal. 133 innings. That will go up this year, barring injury, of course, just with availability. Outside of that, you got 178 innings last year from Keller. Jared Jones, though, only 121.2 innings, and he started the year so good. And he kind of started to tailor off at the end of the year. I expect him to be back closer to what he was at the beginning of last year. He needs to get that ERA down. All those pitchers, other than Skeens, were over 4 in their ERA last year. So they need to get that down into the 3s. But 22 games started for Jones. He's a guy that I've got on my list of guys to draft in fantasy drafts too. Like I'm a big Jared Jones fan.
Me too.
And I like what he can do. 9.76 strikeouts per 9 as well. So I think there's some unproven, or maybe we need a little bit more from Jones and Skeens. Skeens is going to be great. I'm not saying he won't be. But let's get some consistency rolling with those guys and see how things go. And you remember a whole season of Skeens pitching, as good as he is, batting coaches are studying everything they can possibly study. We'll see what year 2 is like for Skeens. The bullpen, David Bednar, we all assumed he was going to get traded at some point, never did. Still there, but really once you get outside of David Bednar, there's nothing that I go, this is great. And last year, Bednar, by the way, 5.77 ERA, but he still got 23 saves, And I think he'll be fine coming into this year. I'm not too worried about him, but everybody else, I mean, we'll see, but I'm not super excited. The other guy to talk about probably is Dennis Santana. He's 28 years old. He pitched 71 innings last year, almost 72 innings, and a 3.89 ERA. So they need that good setup heading into the ninth to give Bednar the best opportunity.
Well, when it comes to Bednar, okay, because I drafted him last year, and you know how I have an affinity against relief pitching to begin with,
Yeah.
and so as you mentioned that ERA is absolutely horrible. So, but the only thing I can say about David Bednar is there is zero chance. I don't care if he goes out there and has 50 saves. He will never again be on a fantasy team of mine. And so I have zero confidence in him. I couldn't even, before we started this, name you a relief pitcher of the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Yeah.
And for good reason. So as good as their starting rotation is as bad as this relief corps is. And so they have no hope when they open that bullpen door and the guy comes in, doesn't matter who he is. And so it's going to be a long season out there, for the relief corps.
All right, let's take a look at the offensive side of things. Left field, Tommy Pham, 37 years old.
37? You think he's 47?
Yeah. Right fielder, Brian Reynolds, 30 years old. Center fielder, O'Neal Cruz. DH, Andrew McCutchen, he's 38. Catcher, Joey Bart, having kind of a small revival last year. Kind of like him, actually, as a value catcher. First base, Indy Rodriguez. Second base, Nick Gonzalez. Third base, Ke'Bryan Hayes. And shortstop, Isaiah Kiner Falefa shows up here. On the bench, Adam Frazier is still there, 33 years old. Joshua Palacios, and then injured currently, but Spencer Horwitz and Henry Davis is another guy too. I like Horwitz and Davis to get some opportunity this year. Horwitz needs to get healthy. Henry Davis, though, I think we'll see a lot more of him here throughout the season as well. What do you think about this offense for Pittsburgh?
It doesn't make me do a whole lot of dancing. And Cruz, as you mentioned, maybe him moving to the outfield will be the tonic that he needs, because he's an exciting player, but he needs to stay on the field. He's going to have shortstop and outfield availability this year, so that boosts him up a little bit in the rankings. And so I like him as far as a fantasy guy. And so, but the rest of these guys, there's middle of the road and below in their offense. And when you still got McCutchen, and when he's a guy that we could have mentioned last week as being an older player, but I don't have a whole lot of confidence in this offense.
I agree. And that's why I think Spencer Horwitz, when healthy, and Henry Davis actually gives you someone to consider there. And Davis last year, when he came up, was outfield and catcher eligible. So if he retains those eligibilities, I haven't even looked to see where he's eligible at. That's a value there. He's 25 years old. And last season, I don't remember what he had last year, but nonetheless, those guys I get more excited about than the guys who are actually currently in the lineup in Pittsburgh outside of O'Neal Cruz. Both of us do like O'Neal Cruz. And again, I think Joey Bart's a value catcher, late or waiver wire catcher as well there. Pittsburgh last year, I said 76 wins. They're right there again on the Vegas has them at 76.5. Man, that's a hard one for me. This division's interesting. We'll talk about St. Louis in a second. But I tend to go over, but not by much.
No, I've got 77.5, so that makes it even more difficult for me. I think 77 is about where I'd peg this team. So if it's 76.5, I'm going over. If it's 77.5, I'm going under.
Okay. All right. You got them pinched right in there.
Right in
77 wins. All right. Let's go to the Cardinals. 83 wins last year. They actually kind of made their win total respectable last season, even though they were never threatening of anything. Their rotation currently looks like Sonny Gray, Eric Fedde, Miles Mikolas, Andre Palante, and Steven Matz this year. And when you look at this team, this rotation, it's really more like the has been. These guys, Gray's 35, Fetty's 32, Mikolas 36, Mott's is 33, Palante is 26. Man, I like Sonny Gray, but I'm probably avoiding St. Louis Cardinals this year. And as a fan of the Brewers, I enjoy watching these guys come to the mound.
Yeah, Eric Fetty is the guy that you should like with a 3.30 ERA, but I'm with you. I'm not ready to buy in. On Sonny Gray is a guy that he's probably better in real life than he is a fantasy guy as well.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so
He had
all these
203 strikeouts last year.
okay, and if you average all these ages out, what does it come to? 42 or so. And so there's not a lot to like to me, and it's really fascinating in how this team has come to this point.
Yeah.
And because they were the quality team, right? St. Louis Cardinals wouldn't always win their division, but they had a quality baseball team, and
Right.
those days are over now.
Yeah.
So, if you're in your division like you, enjoy these days because I see the Cardinals bringing up the rear on this division.
That's what it's looking like. In the bullpen, they got some arms down there. Ryan Helsley, Matthew Liberator, and Jojo Romero comes over from Philly. Helsley's really good. The chances that he gets traded are high, this season. So he's worth drafting because he's probably not going to be on the Cardinals for the whole season. So that's a good thing for him. But again, you just look at this and you go, my goodness, how far the birds have fallen.
That's right. They lost their wings somewhere along the way. So
yeah, I agree. Now, offensively, there is a little bit of hope here because they got some young guns in this lineup that are I'm excited about at the very least. Shortstop Mason Wynn. I'm big on him and think he's a great value shortstop in fantasy. Alec Burleson's currently slotted in the DH spot. Wilson Contreras moves to first. Let's come back to that conversation. Brendan Donovan in left field. Nolan Arenado did not get traded. So he's still the third baseman in St. Louis. Lars Nootbaar, center field. Jordan Walker, right field. Nolan Gorman at second. And Ivan Herrera at catcher. When you look at these guys, Herrera's 24, Gorman's 24, Jordan Walker's 22, Nootbaar's 27, Mason Wynn 22. He'll be 23 soon. Burleson's 26. So again, young guys with some hope. Not a lot on the bench right now, though. At least a lot of experience. Not a lot of experience on the bench. This Thomas Segesi, I'm not sure you say that name. People seem to like him. He's 22. Coming on 23, came up through Texas. And I've seen a lot of people actually saying, hey, watch out for this guy this year to make some things happen as well. So I don't know. We'll see on that. But this offense is better than the pitching at the very least.
At the very least, and they have youth. And but I'm not quite as optimistic on some of these guys like Jordan Walker.
Yeah.
He had every opportunity the last couple of years and he has not produced. And so he is firmly in the bust category as far as I'm concerned. And 22, you can play your way out of it, but he needs to do that soon. This is
he hit 201 last year?
He hit 201 with 5 homers and 20 RBIs.
Yeah.
Okay, 201, you or I could probably do that. But so that's an indictment right there. Yeah. And he needed to do better than that. Nolan Arenado, we've talked about him. He's on his way down. And so
talk about Contreras at first base. What are your thoughts on
first base? That is probably a solid thing because everything that I've heard was he was an awful catcher. Awful as far as defensively is concerned. He couldn't frame a pitch to save his life. And that's the kind of thing that catchers need to. Maybe it won't be so important now that they're talking about this having the system that they're going to have, but he controlling pitchers and calling pitches, none of that was working for him. So sliding him over to first, maybe that will make things better for him. And it needs to be better because he has not measured up the last few years as far as offensively either. So he needs
And
to get it together.
I'm avoiding him on fantasy.
Avoiding him, yeah, we got everybody when we did that Reddit, part of
Yeah.
the catchers. Everybody, well, where's Wilson Contreras? Well, first of all, he spells his name wrong. Okay, so that's an indictment right there. So, but I'm not with him at all.
Yeah. Last year, 15 home runs. He hit 262. I don't trust him as far as I can throw him, and I can't throw him very far. So, yeah, I'm out on him. I'm out on the Cardinals. 83 wins last year,
Yes,
75 and a half is the Vegas number this year. And I'm not sure. I mean, I got to think over like 76, but not by much. I could have a hard time going under just because of the Cardinals, but 75 and a half is an interesting number for him.
Okay, so once again, we have a discrepancy because I have 77 and a half.
I definitely go
I
under.
have a hard time going at 78 seems like a lot to me.
Yeah.
For this team. So I'm going under 77 and a half. And if it's 70, what did you five did you say? 75 and a half?
Yeah.
I'll go over that.
Okay. All right. Very good. That's the NL Central. And that's the hot corner presented by Righteous Felon Jerky. We've got outfield rankings to get to. So we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, let's break down the outfield.
Righteous Felon Craft Jerky is the official jerky of Belly Up Sports. For over a decade, Righteous Felon Craft Jerky has led the American meat snack revolution by concocting delicious, adventurous, U.S.-sourced jerky recipes for uncompromising carnivores across the country. With 15 different flavors to choose from, Righteous Felon has all jerky lovers covered, and by using promo code BELLYUP, you will get 15% off your purchase at righteousfelon.com. Do your taste buds a favor today and rip into a bag of Righteous Felon Jerky.
Welcome back to the Belly Up Fantasy Live Baseball Show. This is our final segment of the show, the Fantasy Focus, presented by SeatGeek. Go to SeatGeek.com. Use the promo code BellyUpSports. You get $20 off your purchase. Let's get to outfielders, and I'm really intrigued to see what the rankings are looking like here, Kevin, for you. So let's go number one at the outfield. Who do you got?
Number one is a battle between two New York players to me. And but I'm going to slot Aaron Judge in at number one. He, just put it out there. Juan Soto is number two. These guys are battling it all out, and everybody talks about how many walks that Soto has. Well, guess what? Aaron Judge walked more times. So he's about as a completed hitter, and I don't, he got hurt a couple years ago because he ran into an outfield fence. But other than that, he's a guy that's going to be in your lineup. He's going to hit 40, 50 home runs. He's going to have RBIs. He's going to have runs. He's going to walk. So this guy does everything to me. So if I'm at the top of my draft and I can pick either Aaron Judge or Juan Soto, I'm going with Aaron Judge.
Yeah, and I'd be happy with either one, but I'm with
Absolutely.
you. I got Judge at 1, Soto at 2. I like again, I just like Judge a little bit better. Overall, he's going to have more home runs than Soto, more RBIs than Soto as well. He's also going to strike out more than Soto, but he's going to do enough as long as he's healthy. He's going to do enough to be where he needs to be the number one overall outfielder. I do have Soto second as well. I don't think we're going to see much difference than last year's numbers with Soto this year in the Mets. And I think those two are pretty easy 1, 2. And I've got Betts at number 3. Do you have Betts at 3?
I do have Betts, and pretty much because he's going to play shortstop. It pretty much cements that for me. Not so much that I think maybe he's the third best outfielder, but shortstop outfield takes the cake on that one for me. So I have him at number 3.
Yeah, I've got him there too. And for me, it wasn't really hard to put him there. I felt pretty comfortable putting him at 3 as well. And I was a little surprised just doing my rankings to see that he's not in my top 5 this year. He's definitely in my first round, but just interesting to see. I've got Judge, Soto, of course, Shohei. I got Bobby Witt above him, Jose Ramirez above him. So, he's not at the top of my list this year, but I still like him a lot. Be very happy if I ended up with him, if I'm, picking 7, 8, 9, 10, somewhere in that range for sure.
Yeah, because from what I've seen, they've got him ranked 6th overall. So I'll be very surprised if he's there at back end of the first round. But
Yeah.
As far as value is concerned, I really like what he can provide.
I agree. All right. So our top 3 are the same. I'd be a little surprised if we continue to be the same, but let's see. Number 4, who do you have?
Number 4, I'm going to go with Yordan Alvarez.
Okay. I'm with
down there in Houston. And so 27 years old, played 147 games, 35 homers, only drove in 86. You would think he'd have more than that, but 88 runs. In the last 4 years, 35, 31, 37, 33. That's the kind of homers he's had. And so he'll play more DH and outfield, but we do not care one iota about any of that. And so in RBIs, 97, 104 before this past year. So he clears all the benchmarks for me. So I really like him. There's going to be, and he's at the back end of that first round. I could see him coming off the bench at 8 or 9. So
Yeah.
I really like him at that spot.
Yeah, I've got him 4th also on the outfielders. And last year, Houston had such a slow start. And I just don't think that's going to happen again. So I think his numbers will be back up. And he still had solid numbers last year. So, and by the way, only 95 strikeouts last year also compared
Amazing.
to other guys.
Amazing.
Up there in that list where you look at Judge with 171 strikeouts, Soto 119 strikeouts. So 95 is pretty solid. I like him at 4. And I'm happy that you've got him there as well. Number 5, who do you have?
Number 5 is your favorite player, and that's Kyle Tucker. And so he's 28. You'd think he was older, but he's only 28. And before this past year, he played 157 and 150 games. So if he can stay in that lineup, I like what he can do in that Wrigley Field ballpark. So I slot him in there. He's a regular 30 homer, 100 RBI guy. And so I have him in here at number 5.
All right. So, and I'm admittedly low on Kyle Tucker. And this will be one that the Reddit people will like a lot. I've got Tucker at number 9 on my list. And I think we're going to see him drop off this year to a degree. He's still going to be a top 10 outfielder. He's still going to have some numbers. Health is a little bit of concern for me. The Cubs, it's more than just, can you go out there and play baseball? There's that locker room. The culture there's not perfect right now. So just adjusting to a new place, all that kind of stuff. I'm intrigued to see how it goes. I dropped him to number 9. I understand that's low. Probably should have him up at number 7 at least, but I got him at 9. So I went low on him there. I'm going to hold off on mine. We'll keep going with yours for right now. Number 6, who do you have?
Number 6, I've got Corbin Carroll in that spot. And he suffered a sophomore slump last year.
He did.
To say the least, but he still played in 158 games. And if he slumped and still hit 22 homers and had 35 stolen bases, it's not like he fell off the mat, but especially early, though, he struggled a lot.
Yeah.
And so I think that Arizona offense, we've talked about that, I think is going to be absolutely good. And so I like him at the top of that lineup. And he's only 24 years old. So I'm really excited to see what Corbin Carroll can do in year 3.
Yeah, I got him at 6 also. And not only did he have 22 home runs, he also had 14 triples. So he's a hitter, and it will come back around. He struck out a bunch last year. I expect him to bounce back. I really hope people are sleeping on him because I'd like to grab him. It's at a great value in fantasy drafts this year as well. I'm with you at number 6, Corbin Carroll. Who's at number 7?
Number 7 is the guy that I don't really understand out there in the fantasy realm, and that's Anthony Santander.
Yeah.
I've got him at number 7, and the reason why I don't understand that is because he's ranked as the 28th outfielder, 95th overall in one. The other, he's 33rd overall or 33 outfielder, 89th overall. I don't know what, something got in their water or something happened.
Yeah.
Because he went from the ballpark that's one of the worst for homers and runs and went to Toronto. I think that's a massive upgrade of a ballpark for him. He's going to have a decent offense. He's going to have one of the best hitters hitting either for or behind him. Not sure how that's going to work out just yet. But I really like, and then he could be, you could put him down. If this holds on draft day, he becomes an outstanding value to me.
Sure.
If you can wait around and still get him later on in the draft, because I really like Anthony Santander.
Yeah, he's number 7 for me also. 44 home runs last year, 102 RBIs. I expect him to be right around that 40 range again this year. I think he's a safe pick in the outfield, and at 7, a good value there, let alone further down the list for sure. All right, number 8, who do you have?
Number 8, and this might cause some heads to roll just a little bit. I've got Jarren Duran.
Me too.
Okay. All right. So, okay, we're swimming in the same water right here.
Yeah.
And so you talk about excitement. This guy is 20 years old. They've got Alex Bregman in that lineup now. And so I really think that there's the potential for him to he played 160 games. He plays in that many, had 21 homers. I'm thinking he's right there on the 30 home run, 90, 100 RBI range. And so I really am excited about what he can do in Boston this year.
Yeah, and he had 34 stolen bases also. So
that's right. That's the kicker right there. So
yeah, I like that at 8 for sure. I'm with you. I got Kyle Tucker at 9. You don't. Who do you have at 9?
9, I have your guy, Jackson Chourio, out there at number 9. Still 20 years old. We just got done talking about him.
Yeah.
And as long as he can avoid that Corbin Carroll second year, slide.
Yeah.
The runway is clear for him to just take off to heights that I'm really looking forward to see what he can do. So I've got him at number 9.
Okay, so I got Chourio at 11. He did not crack my top 10 this year, but he's right there, really close. I was really fighting with him and my number 10 guy, and you still haven't mentioned my number 5 guy, so I'm really intrigued here. Let's go to number 10. Who do you have?
Number 10 is the guy that's I'm almost being dragged into this, but that's Fernando Tatis.
Oh wow!
Out there in San Diego. He's never going to be the player that we thought he might be after everything that's happened, but he's still only 26 years old, and so he still hit 31 home runs. So and their lineup's going to be fine, but I am not. You could probably talk me out of this just as easily as I talked myself into it. But
all right, well, let me talk you out of it real quick. I got number 10.
Do.
I got his teammate Jackson Merrill.
Okay, I've got him. That was a close. I battled on this one. So go ahead, turn me around.
4 home runs, 90 RBIs, 101 strikeouts. Tatis had 96 strikeouts last year and about 150 less at bats. So I just think Merrill in a full season, Tatis is going to have some stats. I like him. I probably got him 12 on my list. But I like Merrill more than Tatis. I trust Merrill more than Tatis. And he had 16 stolen bases last year as well. I like Merrill better than Tatis, and I like Tatis, but I'm going to go Merrill over him. So I got Merrill at 10.
Okay. So, because ESPN, he's ranked 19th overall and the 6th outfielder. So that puts him right there that's not a value to me. So I'm ranking these guys as being, just the top 10 guys, but I don't rank him at all in the top 10 value. And over on Fantasy Pros, they have him at 15th overall. So that's even worse to me. So at that I'm not biting at all on Fernando Tatis at 15th overall. So if you're wanting him, you go ahead and take him in that spot because I'm not going to do it.
All right. Well, let's go back to number 5 for me then, because he still hasn't been brought up.
Okay.
So Judge, Soto, Betts, Alvarez are my top 4. Okay. Then 6 through 10 is Carroll, Santander, Duran, Tucker, and Merrill. At number 5, and I understand why you don't have him here, but you're wrong. At number 5, I have Ronald Acuna from Atlanta.
Oh,
and
okay. Let's get into
injured
this.
last season. We are still kind of trying to figure out when he's going to come back this year, but I suspect he won't be out more than a month to start the season, if that. And if Ronald Acuna is playing, I want him on my team. And so I've got him at number 5. And I almost put him higher, but I said, no, I can't do it. I have him above Carroll because I think he outstats Carroll, even if he misses a month, and everybody else as well. So I got Acuna at 5. What was your thought process with him?
Well, this is what I'm thinking about him is that I've got him on my list as being not a value. And the reason why I say that is because at number 49 overall, okay, that means you're going to have to draft Ronald Acuna in the first 5 rounds.
Yeah.
And I'm just not ready to put that when he's healthy at 100%, he might be you could argue he's number 1 overall. But he hasn't been healthy the last 2 out of the last 3 years.
Yeah.
So that's a problem to me. So if someone wants to take a chance on Ronald Acuna, but in the first 5 rounds, it's not going to be me to do that.
I mean, to me, he's easily a top 50 player. And that's 5 rounds in our league. So I am happy to hear this. I'm hoping that everyone else is thinking like you. Maybe I'll wait longer than I thought to grab Acuna in the draft and be happy with it. It is taking it's a risk. There's no doubt about it. But I'm expecting him to come back. I'm expecting him to play 140 games at least. And if he does that, then he'll be worth drafting at that point. If he ends up only playing 120 or 100 games, well, then it would be a miss for sure. So we will see. You said you got him as a bad value, worst value. I've got Kyle Tucker, but again, everyone's going to draft him higher than I'm going to draft him. And again, he has the stats behind him. He's had good years, no doubt. Last year wasn't great, but he missed a bunch of games. I'm not big on this first year in Chicago for Kyle Tucker. So I got him as my worst value. And you said you've got Acuna in that.
Acuna, and another guy that I have as not being a value is we just talked about Pittsburgh. Brian Reynolds is a guy that I do not have as a value. He's been in the league 4 years now, 24, 24, 27, 24 home runs. He is what he is, but yet he's still got him going in the top 8 rounds. That's a big negative as far as I'm concerned. I'm not going to do that. There are other players that you could wait on in the outfield position a little later in the draft that can do exactly what he can provide. So I am not going to be drafting Brian Reynolds at all. So I'm just not doing it.
That's fair. Let me throw Stephen Kwan in there too. He always goes higher than I'm willing to take him. And, only 14 home runs, 12 stolen bases last season. They're just not enough there. I can't do it. I can't do it with Stephen Kwan. I think he goes way too early as well.
I've always been amazed about him, and people have been way higher on him than I have. And so that continues. And I didn't write him down as not being a value, but I'm not in on him as well.
All right, let's talk about good values. Who do you like?
Okay, so I mentioned him. I think Santander at the 6th round potentially is a massive value. Another guy that I have as a value is Brent Rooker out there in Sacramento now.
Yeah.
Okay. And he hit 39 homers, 112 RBIs, and he's ranked as the 18th best outfielder. So there's some value to me on that. He's hit 30 home runs the season before that, so we don't know. Oakland, I still call them Oakland, but they've made some moves. Surprisingly enough, there's been some guys that have been willing to play there.
Yep.
So I don't think that they're going to be quite as horrific as they've been in the past. But so at 18th outfielder, there's value here to me.
I like it. I'm going to go Riley Green, Detroit. Last year, 24 home runs, 4 stolen bases. He hit 262, 74 RBIs. I don't see him really being any lower than that this year. It feels like he's starting to find his groove a bit here in the majors as well. So I like Riley Green right now. And then the other guy that I'll throw out there as well, I think you can look at the guys in Washington. there's a couple different outfielders in Washington right now that I think, you're not going to take them early. Maybe even in dynasty drafts, you might take them a little earlier. But when you look at guys like James Wood and Dylan Cruz, those are two guys that I'm interested to see right now. You can get them. And even actually Jacob Young is another guy. All three of these Washington outfielders, there's potential for all three of them. And I think they're all at pretty good values. Right now, James Wood is probably a little higher valued than the other guys, or he is definitely higher valued than the other guys. But he's also, the safest bet out of the other guys too. So I like James Wood, Dylan Cruz, and even Jacob Young in Washington, all as good values too. And we'll get to those teams in a couple weeks. Actually, next week we will get to the AL West. So we'll talk about the A's and what they've done next week as well. We're going to
try and refrain from calling them Oakland the whole way.
Yes. We're also going to get the starting pitching rankings, and we'll talk about some rookies in the next week too, rookies to watch for fantasy wise next week as well. This is the final week in my Kentucky studio. Next week we'll be up north, hopefully set up, we're ready to go. We'll see how all that works. Internet is scheduled to get beyond by plenty of time, and who knows what the background will look like, but we'll be temporary studioed for the next couple of weeks probably. But we'll still have a show, planning on that being Sunday night next week as well. Kevin, you got articles posted and more to come, I'm sure, on bellyupsports.com. What do you got going on?
I've got, we talked about Alex Bregman last week, so I went ahead and put out an article about him. And then we had a rather stunning news that came out regarding Victor Wembanyama of San Antonio. He is out for the season. So I thought I'll hit the, this is straight news. So I came out with an article yesterday saying who could possibly, and you can't replace him, but who, because I'm in a NBA fantasy league basketball, and undefeated. Okay, just throwing that out there. So if you're wondering, do I know what I'm talking about? Perhaps. Okay. So check that out. If you've got him on your fantasy roster, he was obviously a first-round pick. So this is exactly what we're talking about. That puts you behind the 8 ball because your first-round pick is down. But who you're going to replace him with? I've got some options. One of them happens to be already on the Spurs roster. So go ahead and check that out. And you never know what might be coming out of my fingers when I'm writing an article, but go over there to the Belly Up Sports, check that out. So there's tons of baseball over there right now. So I'm very excited about where that's headed on the Belly Up Sports website right now.
Yeah, Spurs pulling a David Robinson, going for that first pick overall. Here looking for Cooper Flagg next season. We'll see how that shakes out for sure. And again, you follow Kevin on Twitter or X at Kevin62 WILSEA. The Sports Stove will be pretty quiet this week due to the move. So no Sports Stove football show this week. We did have covered the mock draft that I put out last week. We covered that on the show this week as well. So if you want to go find that wherever you get your podcast, the Sports Stove football show, or on the Belly Up Sports or YouTube channel. Same with this show. You can find the podcast wherever you get podcasts, Belly Up Fantasy Live baseball show. We did get notice that Spotify had not been updating. So we think we've got that fixed, or we'll have that fixed this week, hopefully. But Apple Podcasts has always been good there. And then we always put this show up on the Belly Up Sports YouTube channel after we're done as well. You can follow me on X at Sports Stove, also on Instagram as well. So hope that you come back next week. We got more stuff. Drafts are coming. We'll be setting our draft order pretty soon for our league as well. So all that's coming up, and we'll talk about more of those kinds of things in the weeks ahead. He's Kevin Wilson. I'm Vince Stover. Thank you for tuning in to this edition of Sports Stove. Nope, not the Sports Stove, the Belly Up Fantasy Live Baseball Show.